Hello everyone, in this week's video I'm going to be drawing one of my viewers' original characters. So let's get started. So this character was picked a little bit differently than characters in the past. I was hosting a contest on Amino, and the winner of the contest was Nari-chan. Now if you've been watching my channel for a while, the name Nari-chan might sound familiar, but Nari-chan did not win because she's one of my patrons on Patreon, I promise. So basically, I picked my top favorites. I picked my top 5 favorites, and when I was picking my top 5 favorites, I actually didn't notice that the character was created by Nari-chan until it was already in my favorites. And I'm like, oh, she's one of my patrons. Should I include her in my favorites? But then I'm like, well, then that's kind of the opposite way. I'm not including her because she's one of my patrons, so I kept her in my top 5. And then I didn't even choose the winner. My siblings chose the winner by voting, and so that's how Nari-chan won. So congratulations, Nari-chan. And her OC is Nari. Nari is 16 years old. She is sweet and cheerful and can be a little awkward too. Her favorite thing to eat is ramen. She has the power to glow and make things glow by using her breath. And she's also scared of the dark due to an event that happened in her past. So let's start drawing Nari. So I somehow forgot to record myself doing my concept sketch and my rough sketch. So now we're moving on to the cleanup sketch phase. I was really bummed when I found out that I forgot to record myself doing all the sketching. I was like, oh man, I didn't notice until I went and looked at the footage. I'm like, oh, I forgot to record when I was doing that. So my concept for this picture is to have Nari kind of in a forest and it's sunset. It was going to be totally dark outside, but then I realized that she was scared of the dark, so I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna do that because she looks scared. And so I decided to have it be sunset, so there's still kind of light outside. And she's gonna be blowing on a dandelion because she can use her breath to make things glow. And so I'm like, I wanted to incorporate that, but I wasn't totally sure how to go about incorporating it. And so I'm like, well, what's something she could be like using her breath on? And then I thought of a dandelion. And I'm like, oh, that'd be really cool because I can have all the little dandelion seeds like flying off and they're gonna be glowing kind of like fireflies. I really liked that idea, so that's what I went with. This hand is giving me a lot of trouble right here. I had to do a lot of different sketches for that hand and a lot of different adjusting because like, yeah, it was kind of hard. It was at a weird angle, like it was slightly tilted towards us, but like it was in front of her, and I don't know, that hand was just complicated. Also, I loved drawing her hair. It's kind of short and I wanted it to look really, really flowy and kind of pretty, like maybe there was a slight breeze. Also here, I made an adjustment to her shoulder and that gave me a lot of headaches later. Not literal headaches, but like it caused me a lot of trouble. Because I went through a lot of work trying to make sure that that shoulder and arm like worked, because I was trying to line up the hand like right in front of her. So I was trying to put the elbow in the right spot, and that whole arm was just giving me trouble. Well, when I adjusted the wrinkles to stick out a bit more, it also made her shoulder look like it was like popping out more than the other shoulder. Like if you look at the one shoulder and the other shoulder, the one shoulder looks like it's like popping out a lot more than the other shoulder. And I didn't notice this for a really long time. I kind of started noticing it when I started coloring, but then I'm like, oh, it doesn't look that bad. I don't really know if I feel like changing it. But then as I kept like looking at it, I'm like, nope, it looks really weird. And so I changed it later, and yeah, that was a lot of work because I already colored everything in, so I had to change some of the coloring. And so yeah, now we're on to the line art. The line art was pretty not troublesome. It went pretty smoothly, I think, and went okay, so that's good. I'll talk a little bit about the background because I was talking about the arm and the shoulder when I was doing the background. So the background is going to have some trees and some bushes right behind Nari, and then there's going to be some water. And then on the other side of the lake, we're going to have some little like hills and some trees kind of sticking out of the hills. I decided to go with the water because I thought it'd be kind of cool having it reflect the sky in the water. And also it's an easy way to fill up the background without having to draw a whole bunch of stuff. I had a lot of fun drawing Nari's outfit. It's super duper cute. It has this super large hoodie and these stripes that kind of go along her torso, and she has this glove. I was having a hard time with the bump out by her wrist. Like her hoodie like bumps out right by her wrist and it's like the circular shape. I was having a hard time making that look like normal and not like, I don't know, I was having a really hard time with that. But I was able to make it kind of work, thankfully. Here I'm starting to work on the bushes, and I take one of the foliage brushes in Clip Studio and I'm just trying to make bush-like shapes. I'm just trying to get them to look kind of normal. And then for the trees, I just drew some black curvy lines, and I also added a little bit of lighting to the bushes, and I also put random dots, used Gaussian blur on them, and then lowered the opacity to give the bush a little bit of texture. And now I'm working kind of on the sky. I wanted to work on the background a bit before working on Nari, because or else I kind of would have lost motivation. And I wanted to get all the background elements in place because then it'll make it easier to shade Nari. And so yeah, I'm having the sunset, and the sun's kind of behind Nari, so we can't really see the sun, but we can see all the light kind of coming from around her. So here I'm starting to put in the lighting around her. I wanted her to be backlit, and so all of the light's kind of shining from behind, and I thought this would be really pretty, and I am pretty happy with how it turned out. Here I'm starting to work on the dandelions. I used some reference pictures for these, but I'm pretty happy with how the dandelions turned out. I used some layers set to the layer mode where it adds a line outside of the thing you color. And this made it really easy because I didn't have to draw line art for the dandelions. I could just do things of color and then it would add the line art. And then for the actual fluffy part of the dandelions, I used a textured cross-hatching brush, and then I added some little lines for the dandelions. So now I'm starting to add some color to Nari, or some shading, and I have this overlay layer that makes it look like it's all dark. Also, I guess Nari, her cheeks and nose are often pink. I can't remember the reason why. It's also because of her power, but her cheeks and nose are often kind of red. So yeah, I have this overlay layer that makes everything look all dark, and kind of while shading this, I kind of turn it off and on, just kind of depending on what I feel like doing. When adding the kind of simple shading, I decided to have it off, and then I would go in and kind of just add some shading and highlights. Here I'm adding some more highlights to the hair to make it look more dimensional and stuff. Here I'm adding the more fancy highlights to the hair, so I'm using orange, a more reddish orange, and then like a red, and I have it get more red as we get more towards the front of her, just because I thought it'd make it look kind of cool, and that's kind of how the lighting works, I think. I'm not totally sure, but I have it be the most yellowy orange on the outside, and then it gets kind of more reddish on the inside. I'm really happy with how the lighting on her hair turned out. I feel like it turned out pretty. So next I'm starting to work on the clothing wrinkles, and this oversized hoodie had a ton of wrinkles, so I had a lot of fun coloring it. For the highlights on the wrinkles, mostly used a lightish orangey grayish brown, and also kind of an orangey color. And then for the shadows, I pretty much used an almost black color since it was really dark. And here I'm shading this other sleeve. I had to change the sleeve quite a bit when I adjusted the shoulder. I didn't record myself adjusting the shoulder just because it was kind of tedious and I was thinking a lot and turning layers off and on, and it probably looked kind of crazy. But yeah, I had to kind of recolor that sleeve a little bit when I adjusted that shoulder. I kept debating if I wanted her eyes to be glowing. I would like make them glow, and then like, well, I'm not sure if I want them to glow, but to make them look like they're glowing, I put in a layer at the very top of all my layers, and then I used a layer mode called Add Glow, and then it makes it look like they're glowing, and I did think it looked quite cool. Here I had her eyes glowing blue because I don't really know what color Nari glows when she glows. I thought maybe blue would be cool, but then I decided to maybe have her eyes glow white since they're gray. But then like I kept playing around with it and I just didn't know if I liked her eyes glowing. I felt like they were too distracting and too like, bam, look at the eyes. And I already was going to be having the dandelion be glowing, and I didn't really want the eyes to be like super distracting from the dandelion. And so yeah, there was already going to be a whole bunch of lighting stuff going on. I just felt like maybe adding the eyes in there would be a little bit too distracting. So before finishing up Nari, I decided to start working on the background a little bit more again. And here I'm adding a little bit of orange lighting to some of the leaves on the bushes, just to kind of maybe make it look like the light's kind of slightly shining through the leaves. I also added a little bit of shading to it to make it not look so flat. I just kind of kept putting random splotches of dark color and lines. I didn't totally know what I was doing, but Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with how the bushes turned out. They're not like horrible or anything, so yeah, that's good. I also added a little bit of reflections from the trees into the water, and here I take one of the dot brushes and I just put a whole bunch of dots on the canvas to make the stars in the sky. I also add some rays of light coming from the sun, so yeah, I felt like that looked really cool. I was happy with how that effect turned out, and it looks like really shiny. So here I'm working on the really fun part. I was really excited about this part, and that was all the little glowing dandelion seeds. So at first I just kind of made these little like mushroom kind of shapes for the dandelions, and I don't know, I ended up not really liking these because, I don't know, they just kind of looked like floating mushrooms. And so I take those away later and go into a little bit more detail with the dandelion seeds, but those were just kind of there for now. I also used layer modes on add glow and then put like soft radius of light around all the little dandelion seeds, and so that's what I did. I also put a whole bunch of just little dots and lowered the opacity slightly on those just to kind of fill in the area a little bit, but they're not like super distracting. I kept kind of playing around with the lights, trying to decide if I wanted there to be super big ones or just a bunch of tiny ones. I didn't want them to get too big because dandelion seeds are really tiny, so even the ones that are really close to us would still be really tiny. Here's where I'm kind of going in and adding more detail to the dandelion seeds, and I got rid of those mushroom shapes. I'm really happy I decided to change the shape. I like these shapes a lot better and they look a lot more like dandelion seeds. So yeah, I'm happy I did that. Also, I just did the shoulder now, and here I was going back and forth trying to make sure that the shoulder actually looked better. Here I'm adding more highlights to the picture. I just felt like Nari wasn't quite popping as much as I wanted her to, so I decided to go in and add highlights on everything because I felt like everything was just a little bit too dark and like hard to distinguish. So I added a bunch of highlights on her hoodie and a little bit more around her face and on her hands. And I also added a ton of highlights in her hair to make her hair look a little bit more dimensional and not so flat. Oh, I also added a bit of texture to the trees because the trees looked a little boring, so I just added a little bit of texture to them. I also added some black shading around the edges to make the middle of the picture look brighter. So here I'm going in and adding the extra shading on the hair. I'm really happy I decided to do the extra shading on the hair because I was like, I don't know, I've already shaded the hair quite a bit. I don't really know if it needs extra shading. But then as I kept looking at it, it just looked like it just needed a little bit more shading. Here I'm adding all the highlights. It looks really messy, but I lowered the opacity a lot, so it's okay. So here's the finished picture of Nari. I had so much fun working on this picture and playing around with all the different lighting effects and the glowing dandelions. I had so much fun getting to draw Nari, so thank you so much Nari-chan for submitting your OC, and congratulations again for winning the contest. Before I end this video, I want to say thank you so much to my patrons, including Rachel, Andrew, Swinky, Bonnie, Thean, Cash Money Matt, Julie, Nav from Academy of Games, Luziel, Robert, Tamalan, Pisatera, Timothy, Ann, Magic Gamer Dad, Eduardo, AJ, Valorant, Adam, Nari-chan, Daniel, Panda Bear, Daniel, Aaron, and Patrick. Thank you so much for being a patron and for your support. Well, thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next week in my next video. Bye!